Good morning, all of you. Hope all of you are safe at home, following all the precautions. So today we are going to have, I'm Dr. Trishi, Assistant Professor of Pediatrics. Today we are going to have a class on protein, energy, malnutrition and its management. I hope all of you are ready for the class. I give you 2 minutes. Please settle down. Let's start the class. So what is the magnitude of malnutrition in India? Okay, according to National Family Health Survey, which was conducted in 98-99, percentage of moderate malnutrition in less than 5 years children is 47%. Severe malnutrition is 18%, and wasting is 16%. Okay, coming to NFHS 3 data, which was collected in 2005 and 6. So the percentage underweight is 40%, wasted is 22%, stunted is 44%. Though there is a decrease in the percentages over the years, but still malnutrition is one of the major morbidity and mortality of Indian population. So this is the causes of death among children less than 5 years in developing countries. So as you can see in this pie diagram, malnutrition has got the major chunk of causes of death, which is 54%. The others being perinatal infections, respiratory infections, diarrhea, measles, malaria, and other infections. So from this we understand that malaria is an impending cause of death among children less than 5 years. So over the years, there have been many theories which have been put up to understand the cause of malnutrition, such as protein deficiency, which is resulting in kwashiorkor, Vitteri's time-bound theory, time to adapt leading to marasmus, toxic theory, organ dysfunction, kwashiorkor, niacin theory deficiency, leading to dermatosis, increased ferritin levels, leading to ADH-like action and edema. Dr. Gopalan's disadaptation theory, which says effective catabolism and near normal anabolism in marasmus and failure of anabolism in kwashiorkor is one of the latest theories of date. So the new theories that are coming up are free radical theory, aflatoxin poisoning. You need not go into the details of these theories. It is just for the sake of completion. Okay, free radical theory. So this, according to this theory postulates that free oxygen radicals are potentially toxic to cell membranes and are produced during various infections. So various infections lead to free radical oxygens, which are toxic and damage the cell membrane. So these oxides are normally, in a normal individual, they are buffered by proteins and utilized by antioxidants such as vitamin A, C, E, and selenium. Whereas in malnourished child, deficiency of these nutrients in the presence of infection or aflatoxin may result in accumulation of these toxins, that is free oxygen radicals. These damage the liver cells, giving rise to kwashiorkor. This is what this theory postulates. So because of these infections and other toxins, so there is accumulation of free oxygen radicals, which is otherwise neutralized by the antioxidants, leading to damage of the liver cells, giving rise to kwashiorkor. So this is the flow chart representing the same thing. A noxious agent leading to free radicals, or malnutrition, infection leading to inadequate protective airways, leading to macromolecular damage, so inadequate repair, and finally leading to fatty liver. So let's see what aflatoxin poisoning or aflatoxin theory has to say about it. Okay, when the diet is low in protein, growth stops and there will be stunting. When there is very low protein, then it leads to anorexia. On top of this, when there is an infection, it leads to marasmus. Insufficient diet leading to weight loss, wasting, and edema. So this is what the theory of aflatoxin postulates. So what are the clinical features? So the clinical features, there will be hair changes like flag sign, there may be bands of hyperpigmentation, hypopigmentation, skin changes, again hyperpigmentation, vitamin deficiencies, dermatosis, muscle wasting, edema, psychomotor changes, and anemia, vitamin deficiencies, dehydration, hepatomegaly, cardiac failure. This is how a marasmic child looks. So there's wasting, emaciation, loss of subcutaneous fat. Okay. Kwashiorkor. Can you see? Puffiness. The child appears to be a well-nourished child, but he's having kwashiorkor. Okay. So let's see what are the differences between kwashiorkor and marasmus. How can we differentiate? Okay. Please keep these pictures in mind so that you can understand the differences well. Okay, so let's see the differences between kwashiorkor and marasmus. So marasmus usually occurs in children less than 1 year of age. Kwashiorkor is usually 1 to 3 years of age. There is no edema in marasmus, we have seen, emaciated. So whereas in kwashiorkor, lower legs, there may be edema, there's edema of the lower legs, or they may have generalized edema, giving the look of a good baby. Okay, wasting. So there is gross wasting. You have seen in the picture that there is loss of subcutaneous fat. There's loss of the skin has lost its elasticity. Whereas in kwashiorkor, all this is hidden under the edematous body. Okay, because of protein deficiency. So it is water accumulation. So muscle wasting is obvious in marasmus. In kwashiorkor, it is hidden. Growth retardation is present in both these, but in marasmus, it is very obvious. Mental changes. So the psychomotor changes are a late feature in marasmus, whereas the kwashiorkor children are very irritable, always crying, cranky. Okay. Appetite. The marasmic children have good appetite. Kwashiorkor have poor appetite. The diarrhea. It is usually present in both of them, but mostly seen in kwashiorkor, may be present in marasmus. Okay, coming to the hair changes, as I have told you, kwashiorkor has diffuse depigmentation, flag sign. Flag sign means there is in the hair strands, there is hypopigmentation, giving the picture of a flag. So that is why it is called flag sign, and this dermatosis of the skin. Coming to the lab investigations, serum albumin is low normal in marasmus, but whereas in kwashiorkor it is low. Urinary urea creatinine is low normal in marasmus, kwashiorkor is low. Urinary hydroxyproline to creatinine ratio is low in both. Serum essential amino acids are low in both. Anemia is present in both, but it is more common in kwashiorkor. Hepatomegaly, there is in kwashiorkor there is fatty liver. So this is marasmic kwashiorkor. You can see he's having pedal edema, distended abdomen. There is wasting. So he has features of both marasmus and kwashiorkor. This is marasmic kwashiorkor. Okay, let's prognosticate them now. Poor prognostic criteria in PM. So, okay, age. Infants, the lesser the age, the poorer is the prognosis. Okay, with the weight for height is less than 3 standard deviations. These are all poor prognostic criteria. Okay, when the mid upper arm circumference is less than 11.5, that is stupor, sepsis, hemorrhaging tendencies, thrombocytopenia, signs of congestive cardiac failure, respiratory distress. So all these are features of poor prognostic features of PEM. Okay, and the labs are total serum protein less than 3 gram per dl, albumin less than 2, severe anemia with clinical features of hypoxia, liver dysfunction, altered LFTs, extensive exudate or exfoliative dermatosis, hypoglycemia, hypothermia. All these factors give a poor prognosis to a PEM child. Okay. Coming to severe acute malnutrition. This is one of the most important topics because severe acute malnutrition and its management is a 10 marks question. So please follow it carefully. Okay. Severe acute malnutrition, which is also known as SAM. It is defined as in the children of less of the age groups 6 to 59 months. Okay. It is defined as presence of severe wasting, weight for height or weight for length less than 3 standard deviations, mid upper arm circumference less than 11.5 centimeters, and presence of bilateral edema. Any of these is present, you can label them as SAM. Okay. Children with severe acute malnutrition, they have there is higher risk of deaths. Okay. Can you appreciate the lesions on the legs? This is called dermatosis. Flanky paint dermatosis. So these are the battery of tests that we do when we diagnose a case as SAM. Sorry. Blood sugar, peripheral smear, hemoglobin, total counts, differential counts, ESR, urine examination, stool examination, chest x-ray, RFTs, LFTs, blood cultures, urine cultures, MAN2, and other tests such as protein, albumin, electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, immunoglobulin profile, and HIV. Okay, these are the battery of tests that are done for a case who is suspected or is diagnosed as SAM clinically. So what could be the complication? Why are we more worried about? Why are we all worried about this SAM? What are the complications these children can have? They are hypoglycemia. They're more prone to hypothermias, hypoglycemias, infections. So there is electrolyte disturbances, dehydration, shock, and heart failure. These are the complications. So now we have to categorize the cases into complicated cases and uncomplicated cases. So let's see how we can differentiate them into complicated cases and uncomplicated cases. Okay. So if the child age is less than 6 months, sorry, if it is more than 6 months, the child is alert, his appetite is good, on your clinical assessment, he appears to be well, and he's living in a conducive home environment. That means home environment where the people, where the family support is there, all these things. So this case is an uncomplicated case, and it can be managed at home, provided there is a family support. Okay. What is the criteria for admission of SAM cases. If the age is less than 6 months, or if the age is more than 6 months but not fulfilling the criteria for complicated. So we have seen the list of features based on which we diagnose them as uncomplicated. So any child who is more than 6 months, not having any features of the uncomplicated case, like his nutrition, his appetite is not well preserved, he is not alert, or you feel that he cannot be managed well in this family or in the environment in which he is living. So such cases are considered as complicated cases and they have to be admitted. Institutional care is considered mandatory in these complicated cases. Okay. Okay. So WHO has given us certain guidelines for management of inpatients of SAM. So WHO guidelines for inpatient treatment of severely malnourished children. So this is an overview of how the management of these SAM children going to be. Okay. General principles for routine care. There are 10 steps which have to be followed. Emergency treatment of shock and severe anemia, treatment of associated conditions, failure to respond to therapy, discharge before recovery is complete. So these are the principles, or these are the rules, or these are the guidelines, or this is the flow or pathway according to which we are going to manage the case of SAM. Okay. Okay. General principles for routine care. So we saw in the earlier slide that there are 10 steps for routine care. So these steps are again divided into stabilization phase and rehabilitation phase. In the stabilization phase, it lasts from 1 to 7. That is, the first week is called a stabilization phase. So in which the child is stabilized, and a longer rehabilitation phase that lasts up to 28 days, 7 to 28 days. So during which the child is rehabilitated. Okay. So these steps are accomplished in 2 phases. An initial stabilization phase where the acute medical conditions are managed, and a longer rehabilitation phase, okay, in which the stabilized, the conditions that are stabilized are maintained in rehabilitation phase. Okay. So when you're managing SAM, both the kwashiorkor and the marasmus are being treated in a similar way. There is no differences in the management of kwashiorkor or SAM. So as we have read, now let's know what are the 10 steps in the management. So can you see from the slide that all the 10 steps are divided into stabilization phase and rehabilitation phase. Okay, stabilization phase lasting for the first week, 1 to 7 days, whereas rehabilitation lasting from 2 to 6 weeks. So that is why it is a longer rehabilitation phase. Okay, so the 10 steps which we have to, the 10 things which we have to take care of are hypoglycemia, hypothermia, dehydration, which are of utmost importance, and they have to be immediately managed. Okay, in the initial 1 or 2 days. Thereafter, electrolyte disturbances, infections, micronutrients, cautious feeding, catch-up growth, sensory stimulation, prepare for follow-up. So these 10 steps have to be taken care of in this stabilization and rehabilitation phase. Okay, I hope everybody is following this. So coming to the first step. Okay, how do we manage, treat, or how do we prevent hypoglycemia? Okay, so hypoglycemia here is defined as blood sugar levels less than 54 milligrams per DL. Okay, so this is the cutoff. Or if you are not able to determine the determine the blood sugar levels on testing. Assume that the child is in hypoglycemia. Okay. So when the child is in hypoglycemia, now we have to look whether the child is having asymptomatic hypoglycemia or symptomatic hypoglycemia. Okay, or conscious child or unconscious child. Okay, so conscious child means asymptomatic hypoglycemia. So you have to give them 500 ml bolus of 10% glucose if he is taking orally, well and good, or NG tubes. In most of the PHCs, so what is followed is 1 teaspoon of sugar and 3.5 teaspoons of water. They mix, they make it into a sharbat and give it to the child. If the child is asymptomatic, conscious, if he can drink. Otherwise, put in an NG tube. If he's lethargic or not taking orally well, irritable, then you can give by an NG tube in a conscious child. If the child has symptomatic means if the child will be lethargic, drowsy, irritable, in such a child, we have to secure an IV line and give them 10% glucose. Always remember 10% glucose, 5 ml per kg initially. Okay, it is followed by 50 ml of 10% glucose or sucrose by NG tube. So the first one is bolus, that is why IV. Okay, then that will take care of the immediate sugar values, blood sugars. So followed by 50 ml of 10% glucose by NG tubes. Okay, the RBS, so blood sugar, should be monitored every half an hour until it is stabilized. Remember, every half an hour initially until it is stabilized, thereafter 2 hourly. Okay, then feeding. Start feed as and when the child is ready to take feeds. Start 2 hourly feeds day and night. 2 hourly feeds have to be maintained. Otherwise, there is chance of the child having a relapse of hypoglycemic episodes. Okay. Hypothermia. So these children are also more prone for hypothermia. Why? Because there is impaired thermoregulatory mechanism, and because of lower metabolic rate, there is loss of subcutaneous fat, which insulates body heat. So because of all these things, so impaired thermoregulatory mechanisms, lower metabolic rates, loss of subcutaneous fat, which insulates body heat. So they are more prone for hypothermia. Okay. So when do we call it a hypothermia? If the axillary temperature is less than 35 degrees centigrade, then go for a rectal temperature, because rectal temperature gives us the core body temperature. The rectal temperature is also less than 35.5 degrees centigrade, and it is assumed that the child is in hypothermia. Okay. Low temperature reading thermometers have to be used in the management of these cases, because the normal thermometers may not record the lower temperature. So temperatures having lower readings have to be used. Okay, the child has to be rewarmed. So in these cases, we should not rapidly rewarm the child. So it should be done in a phase-wise manner, because rapid rewarming leads to disequilibrium in the body body mechanisms. So that is why. So the rule to be followed is avoid rapid rewarming. Okay. So how to rewarm the child? The child should be wrapped in 2-layer clothes, covered with warmed blanket. So you have to preheat the blanket and wrap it up, and place a heater or lamp nearby, or put the child on mother's bare chest, so that the child has skin to skin contact with the mother, like a KMC, which we give for preterm infants, and initiate feeds. Okay. If the child is severe, if he is having severe hypothermia, then we have to give him warm humidified oxygen and give 5 ml per kg of 10% dextrose, because hypothermia, hypoglycemia, and infections go hand in hand. It is always a triad. So when you're having hypoglycemia, you have to look for hypothermia. When you're having hypothermia, you have to look for hypoglycemia and infections. So that is why if the child is in severe hypothermia, give him warm humidified oxygen and then also give him 5 ml of 10% dextrose as a bolus. Okay. Then initiate feeds. If the child can take feeds orally, well and good. If the child is not able to take feeds orally, give him through NG feeding. So there should be frequent feeding of the child. Initially, in the very severe hypothermia cases, we can alternate feeds and dextrose. Okay. Or if the child is feeding well, continue the feeds, 2 hourly feeds. Okay. So this is how we manage hypothermia. Dehydration. So dehydration is overestimated or overdiagnosed because because since you have seen in a marasmic child, there is loss of subcutaneous tissue. So looking at look at that child, you will feel that the child is in severe dehydration, which may not be true, because it falsely gives us an impression, because of his loss of his subcutaneous tissue, it falsely gives us an impression that the child is in severe dehydration. So you should avoid overestimating and overdiagnosis of dehydration. Okay. So it is difficult to estimate dehydration using clinical signs alone, because in clinical signs what do we check? We check the skin condition, anterior fontanella, if the fontanella are not closed, moisture of the tongue. So all these things are the clinical signs, but based on these, we cannot estimate the percentage of, or we cannot estimate how much of dehydration is there in this SAM children. So, but assume that all the children have some amount of dehydration. Assume all children with watery diarrhea may have dehydration. Okay. Do not use the IV route for dehydration except in cases of shock. So how do we manage? We give them ORS, be it oral or NGQ. 5 ml per kg every half an hour for the first 1 hour. Okay, then you have to monitor it, and then followed by, for the first 2 hours, 5 ml per kg for the first 2 hours is given every half an hour. After 2 hours, it is given at 5 to 10 ml per kg per hour, first 4 hours. Okay, all these things may be confusing to you when I say, but when you read through your book, you will understand how it is being done. Okay. So always continue the feeding. The feeding should never stop. Okay. So IV route or IV fluids are used for dehydration in cases the child is in shock. Okay. Now, how do we assess dehydration in severely malnourished child? Okay. Some signs are unreliable, like the mental status, because they are as such because of SAM, are apathetic, drowsy, irritable. So, and mouth, tongue, and tears, skin turgor, urine output. Based on these, we cannot assess the dehydration in SAM children. Okay, because edema, the child in a kwashiorkor, the child looks edematous. So, though the child looks edematous, there may be coexistence of hypovolemia. So what are the signs of dehydration in a severely malnourished child? Then, if the usual signs we cannot estimate, then how do we diagnose dehydration in severely malnourished child? Okay. History of diarrhea. So any child who is having diarrhea is prone to have dehydration. So increased thirst, recent sunken eyes, okay, prolonged capillary refill time, decreased urine, weak or absent pulses, difficult using these clinical signs alone still. But it is best to assume that all the cases with watery diarrhea have some dehydration. So what are the grades stages of dehydration: no dehydration, some dehydration, and severe dehydration. So any child who is having watery diarrhea, you should assume that the child is having some dehydration. Treat with ORS unless shock is present. So as we have read previously, until and unless the patient is in shock, we should not use any IV fluids. It can be managed with ORS. Okay. So the ORS which is used for malnutrition is Resomol. Okay, it is reduced osmolality. So this table clearly shows you how it differs from the regular WHO ORS and Resomol. So the sodium content is reduced from 90 to 45, potassium is increased 20 to 40, and glucose level is increased. So this is the Resomol, which is used as a rehydration solution for malnutrition. So the composition of Resomol, the ingredients are potassium chloride, tripotassium citrate, magnesium chloride, zinc acetate, copper sulfate. Okay. So this should be added to diet or oral rehydration salt solutions. This 20 ml of this Resomol solution is added to a liter of diet or oral ORS and is used. Which ORS solutions should be used in severe malnutrition? The options are low osmolarity ORS with potassium supplementation, Resomol, but Resomol is not available in India. So IAP, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, endorses the use of low osmolarity WHO ORS for all types of diarrhea and nutritional status for logistic and programmatic advantages. So what is reduced osmolarity ORS is this, in which the sodium is 75, potassium is 20, glucose is 75. So sodium and potassium, you can remember, sodium and glucose is 75, potassium is 20. Okay. Now, how do we manage treatment? Only rehydrate until the weight deficit is corrected and then stop. Do not give extra fluids to prevent the recurrence. Okay. What is the previous weight and what is the present weight? So that weight deficient, you have to rehydrate until that deficiency is managed or corrected, and then stop the IV fluids. With the impression of the child may go into recurrence of dehydration, don't just push fluids into the body. Okay. So how do we manage? Here also we have to check whether the patient is conscious or unconscious. If the patient is conscious, he can take orally or NG tube. Then we give him ORS solution 5 ml per kg every 30 minutes for the first 2 hours. Okay. If the child is unconscious, go for IV fluids. Ringalactate and 5% dextrose at 15 ml per kg in the first hour and reassess. Reassess the clinical signs. Reassess how the clinical signs are improving, how the capillary refill time, pulses. Okay. So if these are improving, then 15 ml per kg in the second hour. Okay. If not improving, then the patient should be managed as he's having septic shock. Electrolyte imbalances. So as we have seen, management of electrolyte imbalances is also one of the steps. Okay. So in this, we have to be careful because plasma sodium may be low, though the body sodium is usually high. Okay. Sodium supplementation may increase mortality. So we should not push the sodium. That is why we are using a reduced osmolality WH, in which the sodium content has been decreased. Okay. Potassium and magnesium are deficient and need supplementation. It may take 2 weeks to correct them. Okay. Edema, if present, is partly due to these imbalances. Okay. Do not ever treat edema with a diuretic. Do not think there is pedal edema and generalized edema and push and give diuretics to the child. Okay. It is because of these electrolyte imbalances. Once these are corrected, it will subside. Okay. Potassium. In SAM children, there is too little potassium inside the cells. all SAM children should be given potassium supplements for 2 weeks. Forget about the dose, because you start or try to remember the doses, you will mix up with all the doses and you will mess up. So just remember that you have to give them potassium supplementation for the first 2 weeks. Okay. So potassium chloride is a syrup which is the most available medicine which we usually give, pot chlor. Okay. So give extra potassium daily for 2 weeks. Do not treat edema with diuretics, since most diuretics increase the loss of potassium and make electrolyte imbalance worse. So never treat edema with diuretics. Coming to magnesium. In SAM children like potassium, there is also deficiency of magnesium. So on the first day, 50% magnesium, 0.3 ml per kg is given IM once. Okay. After this, on second day onwards, he can be given orally for the 2 weeks. Okay. So first day is IM, 50% magnesium sulfate, and thereafter orally for 2 weeks. Extra magnesium should be given daily for 2 weeks. Next. So we have dealt with hypoglycemia, hypothermia, dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, now infection. So in these, the usual signs of infection such as fever are often absent. There are no localizing signs also. So that means even that the infection is present, the child will not show any clinical features or clinical signs of fever. So we have to give broad spectrum antibiotics to all the children. Okay, as we discussed previously, hypoglycemia, hypothermia, and infection coexist. It is a triad. So when the child is having hypoglycemia or hypothermia, you should always think about infection. When the child is having infection, we should always think about hypoglycemia and hypothermia. So hence, if either is present, assume infection is present as well. So if either hypoglycemia or hypothermia is present, assume that the child is infection and give them broad spectrum antibiotics. If there are no complications in the child, give cotrimoxazole, severely ill ampicillin and gentamicin. If the child fails to improve clinically within 48 hours, then you have to add cefotaxime and ceftriaxone, okay, according to IM and CI guidelines, which you will learn later. Just remember, you have to add cefotaxime or ceftriaxone. Now, which antibiotics in which case? If it is an infected child or is having complications, then give ampicillin, Genta, add cloxacillin if staphylococcal infection is suspect. All this is there in your book. If the child is for septic shock or no improvement or worsening in the initial 48 hours, cefotaxime should be added. Okay, don't go, just learn the names. Over the years, you will learn the doses also. Okay, meningitis, give IV cefotaxime, along with it amikacin. Dysentery, ciprofloxacin, ceftriaxone if the child is sick or already received nalgesic acid. So these are the antibiotics which you have to use. Next step is correct the micronutrient deficiencies. All severely malnourished children have vitamin malnutrition deficiencies. Okay, so vitamin A is given orally on day 1. Let's learn about the doses of vitamin A in subsequent slides. So here we will see what are the micronutrients that we have to supplement. Given daily are multivitamin supplements, folic acid 1 mg per day. On day 1, give 5 mg, thereafter 1 mg per day. Zinc 2 milligrams per kg per day, iron 3 milligrams per kg per day after the first week. This is very important. Iron should not be given during the stabilization phase. Why? Because it promotes, iron has the capacity to promote free radical generation. As we know, free radicals are considered one of the cause for the features of SAM. So iron should not be added in the first weeks until the child is stabilized. Also, iron promotes bacterial proliferation. So when there is an infection, you should never give iron. So remember this, it is very important. Iron should not be added in the first week because it generates free radicals and it promotes bacterial proliferation. So that is why iron is added after the stabilization phase, usually after a week of the commencement of management. Okay. Now, how to correct vitamin A? Why are we so much worried about vitamin A deficiency? Because vitamin A deficiency leads to blindness, and the child may become blind within no time. But since it is a preventable condition with vitamin A solution, which is easily available, it is very important to deal with vitamin A deficiency immediately. Okay. Vitamin A is given orally immediately on day 1. Irrespective of the child having any evidence of vitamin A deficiency or no. Day 1, all the children are being given vitamin A. Okay, irrespective of any evidence or irrespective of the child being given the previous doses. Okay, so vitamin A orally immediately on day 1, unless there is a definite evidence that a dose has been given in the last month, or if bilateral edema. Irrespective of these conditions, vitamin A has to be given. How it is given? If the child is less than 6 months, 50,000 international units or 0.5 ml of vitamin A solution. 6 to 12 months, 1 lakh international units or 1 ml. More than 12 months, 2 lakh international units, 2 ml. Okay. Less than 6 months, 1 ml. 6 to 12 months, 1 ml. More than 12 months, 2 ml. In edematous patients, give 1 dose after edema has subsided. Another dose. Okay. Repeat the dose on day 2 and day 14 if there is any signs of xerophthalmia. So this day 1 we are giving to all the children, but if you find that the children are having any signs of deficiencies or deficiency, then repeat it on day 2 and day 14 because the children can go blind within hours. So how to correct anemia? Do not give iron initially. As I have told you, it promotes bacterial proliferation and free radical generation. Okay, giving iron too early is dangerous because the blood may have too little protein to bind the iron and keep it safe. Unbound iron can stimulate the growth of bacteria and make infections worse. So start iron supplementation in the catch-up or the rehabilitation phase when there has been time for iron to be bound and the antibiotics have reversed the infection. So in the initial stages, due to lack of protein, the iron cannot go and bind to the protein. So it is freely available and it stimulates the growth of bacteria. Also, free radical generation. Okay, that is why after all these things have been checked, then iron supplementation. So the iron, how do you assess severity of iron? As you all know, we'll check the palms, tongue, palpebral conjunctiva. Okay, if the anemia is very severe, that means severe pallor of the palm of the hands and there is risk of heart failure, then treat with very careful administration, or the child may also need small blood transfusion. Okay, if you feel that the child is in severe anemia and is decompensated. Okay, the iron requirement per day is 3 to 4 mg per kg per weight. How to correct other micronutrient deficiencies? To correct the deficiencies of riboflavin, ascorbic acid, pyridoxine, thiamine, fat-soluble vitamins, give multivitamin. A, D, E, K vitamins, give multivitamin supplements without iron. Folic acid, day 1, 5 mg, thereafter 1 mg per day, daily in more than up to 6 months. In a child is more than 6 months. Zinc, 2 mg per kg, copper 0.2 to 0.3 mg per kg, continuous giving of nutritious mixed diet. Okay. The 7th step is initiate refeeding. Okay. At all the stages, when you feel that the child can take feeds, start feeding him. Okay. Achieve catch-up growth. Readiness to enter the rehabilitation phase is signaled by return of appetite. So when the child regains his appetite, that means that the stabilization phase is over and the child is ready to enter the rehabilitation phase, which usually occurs after 1 week. Okay. So the recommendations are milk-based F100, F75, F100. F100 means it contains 100 calories per 100 ml of the milk, and the proteins are 2.9 to 3 grams protein per 100 ml. Okay. In rehabilitation phase, vigorous approach to feeding is required to achieve very high intake and rapid weight gain of more than 10 grams weight gain per kg per day. So this is how this should be the weight gain in the rehabilitation phase. So initially, when you are feeding the child, we are giving them F75 feed. That means it contains 75 kilocalories per 100 ml of the feed. So now we have to replace the starter F75 feed with same amount of catch-up formula feed for 48 hours. Okay. Then slowly, initially, suppose if you are giving F75 feeds 100 or 150 ml per day, the same amount replace it with F100. Okay. In the rehabilitation phase. Then increase each successive feed by 10 ml until some feeds remain uneaten. So this is a rule that whenever you are feeding any child, any healthy child, some amount of feed should always be left behind in the bowl or in the bottle or anything. Only then it is an indication that the child his satiety is satisfied. Okay, so increase each successive feed by 10 ml until some food remains uneaten. The point when some remains unconsumed is likely to occur, which intakes reach about 30 ml per kg feeds. Okay, per kg feed. So that means if some amount of feed is left, if you feed the child until some amount of feed is left back, his intake will usually approach 30 ml per kg per feed. Okay. The left back amount. The daily record weight and plot. So record the weight daily and plot it on the graph. So can you see? Now gradually the weight keeps increasing. Okay. So these are some of the recipes for, if there are no ready to use formula feeds, we can use F75, F10 feeds, and this is how it is. This is the recipe for it. So how can we locally prepare F75 and F100 feeds? Like full cream milk 30 ml, okay, 10 gram sugar, half tablespoon MCT oil, water up to 100 ml. If you mix all these, you will get 75 to 80 kilocalories and 1 gram protein. Okay, if it is ready to use therapeutic feeds, 20 grams in 100 ml of F100. Okay, so 100 grams of this will contain 500 calories and 50 grams protein. So similarly, F100 feeds. These are called the catch-up feeds. So full cream milk 90 ml, 5 gram sugar, half teaspoon MCT oil, water up to 100 ml. This will have 100 kilocalories per 100 ml and 3 grams protein. Okay. Principles of management phase 1. Patients without an inadequate appetite or having any medical complications. So, and the phase 2 is, so this is dividing the cases into. Phase 2 is the patient has good appetite and no medical complications. Patient with good appetite admitted directly into phase 2. Okay. Next, provide sensory stimulation and emotional support. Delayed mental and behavioral development is present in these children. So provide them with tender, loving care, cheerful environment, structured play therapy, physical activity. Excuse me. Maternal involvement, you should involve the mother in whichever way possible in management of the child, like comforting, feeding, bathing, playing, skin to skin, eye to eye contact. Okay. Prepare for follow-up after recovery. So the target weight should be, the discharge weight should be more than 15% of the baseline weight. And the child should be at least 90% of weight for length can be considered to have recorded. So if the weight for length is 90% and he is prepared for follow-up. Show parent or caregiver how to feed frequently, how to increase the feed, how to make them energy and nutrient dense, structured play, and also give advice for parents when to bring back the child for regular follow-ups, immunizations and supplementation, and should ensure vitamin A is given every 6 months. When to discharge. Okay, if there is absent of no pedal edema for at least 10 days and there is 15% weight gain from the weight on admission or weight on the day free of edema. Okay, there are no medical complications, and these conditions, the child can be discharged. If you are discharging a child less than 6 months, they need special regimen. That's common between. Okay. How do we manage children younger than 6 months? Breastfeed every 3 hours. Duration at least they should feed for 20 minutes to ensure the hind milk is being taken. More often if the child asks for more, at least 8 times per day. 1 hour after breastfeeding, complement it with 5F100 diluted using the supplementary sucking techniques. Okay, F100 we have seen. Okay, and other routine medications are vitamin A at admission only, folic acid at day 1 and thereafter 1. Ferrous sulfate when the child sucks well and starts to grow. Take the quantity of F100 enriched with ferrous you need in phase 2. Iron can be given in separate also. Antibiotics, which is using regularly until the course is over. Okay. Emergency treatment of shock and severe anemia. Since previously we have read that we have to use IV fluids only if the child is in severe shock. So ringalactate with 5% dextrose or half normal with 5% dextrose at the rate of 15 ml per kg per hour for the first hour. Okay. Continue monitoring every 10 minutes. Reassess after 1 hour. If no improvement or worsening, then consider septic shock. If there is improvement in the form of pulse, faster capillary refill, increase in blood, consider severe dehydration. Okay. Ringalactate is given again 15 ml per kg over 1 hour. If accepts orally, start ORS orally. Clinically better but not accepting, then give a second bolus. Okay. Severe anemia, blood transfusion is required if HB is less than 4, or if there is any decompensation, like there is any respiratory distress, then if the HB is high, you have to give blood transfusion. Okay. Whole blood 100 ml per kg slowly over 3 hours with a shot of furosemide. Okay. Monitor respiratory rate, heart rate every 15 minutes. If either of them rises, transfuse more slowly. Give oral iron for 2 months to replenish the iron stores. So this we can skip. Other treatment of other associated conditions, vitamin A, how it is, there is vitamin A deficiencies. We have already learned that we have to supplement with vitamin A, irrespective of whether deficiency is present or no. If there is cornea clouding, ulceration, additional eye care is needed. In such cases, we have to give them antibiotic eye drops 2 to 3 hourly for 7 days, and atropine eye drops 1 drop 3 times daily for 3 days. Dermatosis, it is because of zinc deficiencies. More than 6 months, 20 mg per day for 14 days. To less than 6 months, 10 mg per day. In addition, apply barrier cream to the raw area to prevent excess water loss from the denuded skin. So avoid nappies. Common continuing diarrhea, common feature, but it should subside during the first week of treatment with cautious feeding. In the rehabilitation phase, loose, poorly formed stools are no cause for concern provided weight gain is satisfactory. Okay. In case there is mucosal suspecting mucosal damage, giardiasis, do a stool microscopy and give metronidazole. So also you have to think about lactose intolerance. It is rarely due to lactose intolerance. Treat only if continuing diarrhea is preventing general improvement. If you feel that diarrhea is preventing the improvement, then suspect lactose intolerance and give them lactose-free diets. Start F75, low lactose feeds. Okay. In exceptional cases, substitute milk feeds with yogurt or lactose-free infant formula feeds, or reintroduce milk feeds gradually in the rehabilitation phase only. Parasitic worm infestations, mebendazole. You have to check if there is strong suspicion or if there is history of any contact with TB. You have to think about tuberculosis also. MAN2 test, chest X-ray. If the test is positive or there is strong suspicion, treat it according to the guidelines, TB guidelines. Okay. When do you call it failure to respond to treatment? Okay. If there is poor weight gain, less than 5 grams per kg per day, then it is called failure to respond to treatment. It could be because of inadequate feeding, untreated infections, specific nutrient deficiencies, or tuberculosis and other psychological problems. Okay. If there is weight gain of 5 to 10 grams per kg per day, you have to check the intake. Maybe the child is having less intake, and increase the feeds and take care of any infection if present. If there is good weight gain, that is more than 10 grams per kg per day, continue the feeds. So you have to grade the weight, the amount of weight, the weight the child is gaining per day, and we have to check the management steps if we are missing something, and we have to take care of those. Okay. Failure to respond to treatment, primary failure. What is primary failure? Failure to regain appetite by day 4. Failure to start losing edema by day 4. So by day 4, the child should regain his appetite and start losing edema. And there is presence of edema on day 7. Failure to gain at least 5 grams per kg per day by day 10. Then we call it as primary failure. That means the child never responded to our treatment. Okay, secondary failure to respond. Failure to gain at least 5 grams per kg per day for the 3 consecutive days during rehabilitation phase. That means during the stabilization phase, the child has responded very well, and coming to the rehabilitation phase, the child did not gain weight of at least 5 grams per kg per day for the 3 consecutive days. Then we call it as secondary failure to respond. What is the criteria for discharge? When weight for height reaches more than 90% or less than 1 standard deviation and there is no edema, the child is considered recovered. There should be no signs of infections. Taking adequate quantities, 120 to 130 calories per kg per day, receiving all the adequate macronutrients, consistent weight gain of at least 5 grams per kg per day for 3 consecutive days, on exclusive oral feeding, completed immunization appropriate for age, caretaker sensitized to home care. This is very important, because if the mother feels that after going home, she may not be able to take care of the child, then there is no point in discharging the child. So the caretakers also should be sensitized for home care. When all these things are fulfilled, then the child can be discharged. Children whom you can discharge early. Recovery is complete if 90% of weight for height is regained, but can be discharged early for domiciliary treatment if the child is more than 1 year, good appetite and weight gain, no edema, and antibiotic treatment is completed. Then you can discharge the child early. Okay, the mother is available at home, motivated, trained to look after, have resources, resides near to the hospital. In these conditions, the child can be discharged early. So, feeding should be monitored at home. They should be fed frequently, at least 5 times per day. Modify home feed so that they should it should suit F100 feeds. High energy snacking in between the meals. Assistance to complete each meal. Give electrolyte mineral solution. Breastfeeding should continue. So that's it about SAM. I know it is a very lengthy topic and there are many things which you have to understand in this. So please read through your book so that you will understand it better. Okay. Any questions you have, please note them down. We'll be happy to answer all of the questions when you are back. Okay. Hope to see you all safe. Thank you.